Don't be a third-class citizen in a first-class country. Be a first-class citizen in a third-class country.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for watching, everyone. Today we have a session of our podcast episode with Mr. Ara, who is the founder of araCreate and DreamSpace. Welcome, Mr. Ara.
Thank you, Dano, and happy to be on this podcast. And let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in. No time to waste, man. Because you are in Berlin, I'm in Kuala Lumpur, I'm from Germany, so we kind of have a similar background. But then there's also so much stuff going on in your life. I heard you were the board member of in 23 companies. You're like a serial startup maker, and you have like an amazing amount of clients with araCreate. So please explain on a kind of what is it that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I have two verticals of my life as as a social entrepreneur on one side. That's what I mentioned, DreamSpace, and the other side is a tech entrepreneur, where I have the araCreate side, and where I have been involved in founding several companies in both sides, social side and the tech side, and some of these companies on the for-profit side are so all the tech side are for-profit companies, and the social enterprises are non-profits. Um, so. Um, so basically, some of these companies are on the tech side. They are service providing company, providing kind of a 360-degree services from concept to mass manufacturing of innovations or developing creative solutions such as movies or animation, VFX, and so on. And so that part of our create focuses on we call it, we have a few verticals in engineering, manufacturing, media, business, legal, investment, and training, and these kind of things that we do under our create. And when it's on the social side, and DreamSpace and then relevant entities around that, and are mostly operating in the global south, including we have some nonprofits in Germany, but it's enabling the social enterprises in global south. So what we basically do there is empowering underserved communities through education, innovation, and entrepreneurship through a certain incubation model and supporting system for these youngsters from various underserved and vulnerable communities. And so that's what is about, which I manage on both sides.
Holy cow! I mean, how you're just one guy, right? I mean, Ara is one guy, but you seem to be managing not just a company with a multitude of clients and multitude of services, but then also another universe of social enterprise where you're helping people. What do you mean by global south? Is that? Are that specific
It's a
countries?
term. Global South is a term. It's a noun, which is usually meaning as a global north. Is it doesn't have to be geographically north. It's the same with the global south. Doesn't have to be geographically southern
Oh, I see.
part of the world, but usually the countries that they have developing countries, then countries that they have difficulty. So usually it's mentioned as some parts of uh, South America, Africa, and Asia is considered as global South countries, and yeah, and in Germany they call it also, I think, DAC listed countries or something like that. Uh,
Okay.
but it generally is internationally is known as global South. Yeah.
Wow. So you're helping the people in the global south, so those who need help to build their business, who don't have the environment that's supporting them. And in the global north or Europe, you are working
We
with
make
the big
money.
boys. You make money, and you're doing like media, IT, and I mean, I find it mind blowing. I cannot even start to understand like the scope of all the things you say. It's 360. So yeah, that's a lot of different angles you seem to be taking, and you seem to be sitting in the lab doing some like heavy IT or electronic stuff there. So uh, it's a lot what you do. Um,
However, it's not that
let's
I do all these things myself. So it's all about the
yeah.
team and the independent companies under this portfolio. So yeah.
Okay, so it's a network of people, it's a network of companies, and And
Companies
my
which I
question,
co-founded. Yeah.
yeah, you co-founded. All right. Now, that is an amazing situation to be in, and I would be really curious to hear how this came about. So, if we can travel back to 10-year-old Ara and see where he was living and how he started to create this empire that he's running today, that would be a very interesting story to hear, man.
I mean, it's as an entrepreneur on stage, everything looks shiny, but behind the scene, it's all difficulties. But it's not an empire. These are different. We are doing something we can do, and these small. They are not big corporate companies or so like that. So it's all that. So I tell myself more of a social entrepreneur than the for profit, either whatever tech or media, whatever it is. But I'm more of a social entrepreneur. And the story of like why I became an entrepreneur, it was not. It's not 10. Yeah, it was more than 20 years of story, and maybe I can go back even not 10 years of Aravind. It's even before that. So I think, yeah, people ask me why I do what I do. That's the question always been asked. I was born in Sri Lanka. I'm from Sri Lanka natively, and
Oh,
I was born in at the time that in 80s several family members in our my grandparent, father, uncles were killed, like shot dead
oh,
as normal people, no rebel,
oh my
nothing,
God.
just normal people. And so in those times in early 80s, majority of our family migrated to other countries. My family, in the sense, we are like family of 400, 500 people, and most of them, they left to different parts of the world, mostly global north, because of course they want to go a place where there's acceptance and support and so on. And but fortunately or unfortunately, my mother decided to stay because my grandmother saw her husband and kids died and a lot of other things happened. So my mother stayed because we are a matriarchy community from the Sri Lankan Tamil, Eastern Sri Lankan Tamil people. And so basically, because of that reason, I was born and brought up in a war zone. So compared to my cousins of my age who were born and brought up in Germany or Canada, UK, Australia, any country you can imagine in global north. And but as you can know that the story of Sri Lanka has been very difficult. The long wars, so the longer war, and the longer the war, the younger the soldier. So at the age of 14, I was forced to be a child soldier, and several kids in my age, about 10 years old or so, like would been forced to be in the war field, and then several of them die and so on. And at that moment, it was only us, me and my mom and my sister were living in the country, because most of the time everyone is gone, like uh, living somewhere else, and outside of Sri Lanka. And so so what happened was, then I we decided to leave the country. It was a ceasefire time in Sri Lanka, facilitated by Norway, and it was happened 22 years ago, 23 years ago, the year 2000. So yeah, 23 years ago. And so we all went to India, because it was the only place we could quickly go during the ceasefire. We took a flight and we went, and situation were not there, right? Because it's in India is one of the country which didn't have a system for like taking in a proper system for refugee integration or something like that. And yeah, it was a difficult time. So my mom, my dad was living in Saudi Arabia at the time, and so my mom and my elder brother was living in Russia at Moscow. He was also sent out when he was young, and so my sister was sent to him to Russia, and my mom went to Saudi, and so I stayed in India. uh, I was yeah. So I was young, and but the situation in India was difficult, because we didn't get a place to live, and people would not just give a place because we are Sri Lankan Tamils and so on. And I didn't go initially to school, and because nothing was recognized for us, and we didn't have any address, bank account, anything. We were basically stateless. We were made into stateless people, without any paper, any identity, and so on. And that at that time I was uh, 15 years old, and I started thinking, because I was very much interested in doing, like, digital stuffs, and I learned even when I was in Sri Lanka. So I started learning how to do animations, because the kids of my age were like basically playing games, and I wanted to make games. So this was 20 years ago, 21 years ago. And so that's how I started doing that. And then I learned from a few different places and sources myself, and then I decided to start my service providing around that media and animation, graphics, and also 2D and 3D animation at the time. And that's how I understood that you can basically learn anything yourself, and you can start a business yourself without even having anything. And of course,
Certificate.
yeah, also, like, I didn't have any bank account or anything, address or anything. So basically I have to do it through some proxy people to receive the money or something like that, through Western Union and so on. And I had clients, mostly clients were in Canada initially. That's how I started this entrepreneurial journey. And
Wait a second. So you were 15 and you were working for clients in Canada as an animator?
yes, animate, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How does a 15-year-old homeless boy, I mean, not homeless, but boy in India with this horrific background start, to acquire clients from Canada as an animator age 15? How did that happen?
So it's mostly through word of mouth. So even last 20 years of my work is client base is also like that. So we have all of our majority of the Sri Lankan Tamils outside of Sri Lanka are in Canada. So like few million people probably, I think.
Okay. So
So
you
it
had
came
friends in
to,
Canada.
yeah, like family, they asked this and that. And also my brother was in Russia, so I did like some a learning management system, like for anatomy lessons for Moscow Medical Academy and things like that. So it's all through word of mouth, and
Oh,
then
word of
just,
mouth. Okay, okay.
yeah,
Okay, now it makes
simple.
sense. I thought, yeah, so to be like to learn a skill as an animator is one thing, but then to master like marketing and promoting
Yeah,
yourself internationally age 15, that would have completely blown my mind. But yeah,
yeah,
I understand. So you had your people, you had like a network of
yeah.
people all over the world who would recommend or refer whatever projects to you. Yeah, I see.
Exactly. I mean, that's how it has been even now for the last 20 years. Even all the business that we we get it through people whom we know. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So you are a really strong networker. I mean, it seems to be something in your family, but I mean, to this extent, where you're working at this scale and everything happens through word of mouth and connections. I mean, that is very, very unusual and very remarkable, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah. So maybe like I can continue. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. So and then the struggle was very difficult in India. It was more easier to be a war child in a war zone than being a oppressed, teenager without any identity in another country. So I always had difficulties, but somehow found ways to. Later, I found ways to go to school, and then I finished my school. But again, I cannot be officially do things or go to university, and then again, I was not included in the official ways, and then this and that. Went to universities, did some engineering in electronics and telecommunication, and then after that, I was working also in a corporate job. And But then by the time, every time, anything that I couldn't do because I was a stateless person. So even if I get a job or whatever, that's only for a month or two, because then they see the legal issues and they would ask me to resign and things like that. And it's the same with the school, same with the university. They would put me in an admission initially, and then they will see, oh, this is a problem, and they kind of a chicken and egg situation. So that is how it has been. It's been very difficult time away from family. Family couldn't, also anyone couldn't visit, and then I couldn't leave. They don't leave, let me go. And I tried to deport myself 6 times, but it was not working. And so it was kind of a very suicidal, depressive time, 7 years of my life, because no identity, no home, no address, nothing, and so on. And then the so when the war ended in 2009, and so I was still trying to leave India and to go back, and um, it was not possible. And my brother moved from Russia to India, and then he at the time, it was very, for him it was very official. He was a doctor, so it's not like my story. And so with him, we started a startup in 2009, an edtech startup for medical doctors, which is still there. And my brother runs it now for many years, and since 2009. And then after that, I was involved in that process of building completely a different startup from the ground up, and with like really many doctors were working with us and so on. And then by 2010, I was able to go back to Sri Lanka, and so basically I was going home after 10 years, and met my family, my sister, my parents, and so on. They all came from all different places at the same time to Sri Lanka. And that's the moment that I was kind of 24 years of my life have been either I was a war child, or in a child soldier situation, or a child refugee or young refugee. And I was always and very depressive, suicidal, depressive, didn't have any identity and anything in my life. So I was always looking for a purpose, like what is the reason that I survived so far, because many of my situation didn't survive, in many ways.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was searching, what is the purpose, why I still survive so far, and so on. And then I slowly started getting into the things, and understanding what happened in the country. And so if you look at, like, it's a 30 years of war, almost 30 years of a war, caused a huge socioeconomic and environmental disaster, in the country. And we saw that, every international aid and development corporation, government were there to support, but they cannot solve the fundamental problem sustainably. They can give some solution for short term. And recent example is Afghanistan. 40 years of Afghanistan. What happened? And so the same way that Sri Lanka also had several decades of international intervention, but they couldn't solve the fundamental challenges, because the people there have lost the ability to solve their own problems. They kind of dependent on someone for everything. And that's the moment that I thought that, okay, now if I have survived somehow, learning things myself, creating innovation or creating stuffs and building companies, and if I survive this far, and anyone can probably do, who have gone through the same challenges. And that's how I came up with all these ideas of social enterprises, building these kind of organization, empowering youngsters or anyone. We also have trainees from 6-year-old to 50-year-old, and anyone who have gone through the same challenges, and empower them through certain way of providing them a challenge-based education, not subject-based or project-based, a challenge-based education, develop a grassroots innovation, and build an impact venture out of it. And that is how it has become a big work for us in this so many years. And with the peace, we started with peace building, and later in this model. And this is DreamSpace, and within DreamSpace there are several entities. 20 plus ventures were born out of it, and it operates in different places, not only in Sri Lanka, in many places in Sri Lanka, and outside of Sri Lanka also. And at the same time, I got the opportunity to move to Germany as a researcher, and on a European Union funded scholarship program. And then I moved, and parallelly I built my tech enterprise and companies and things like that here, which helped me to bootstrap my social enterprises. So the cash flow was from here, which I can use it to bootstrap my social enterprises and invest in them, support them, and provide them everything non-profit. So I put 60+% of my time and income to build up all these things, and now they are self-sustaining on their own, and so it's okay. So that is the connection between both sides.
That is I've never heard anything even similar to what you have told us just now. the story of a war child who came to India. I mean, you survived on your own in India for like 10 years or something. How do you do that? I mean, you had no parents. You were alone in India in a country who didn't really want to have you there, right? And then how do you survive as a kid?
I just survived. That's why I said I always had this question: how did I survive? I mean, my parents couldn't also like they couldn't do anything much, and because of the situation, they also prohibited people from Sri Lanka coming to India, even on these terms. And I mean, a lot of my relatives told my uncles and my relatives told my mother that I'm going to be a drug dealer in India because it's such a big, massive cities. I ended up being from Sri Lanka to going to Chennai and then Delhi, like Mumbai and Bangalore, all these places I stayed. And again, it just survived, just survived. And place to place, I think I've been to more places than any Indian would have been in India. I lived in every edges of India, and I have spoken like I have to hide my Sri Lankan identity, so I have to learn this language. I spoke like 4 Indian languages, and and also spoke like slang, like exactly like Indian Tamil. In Sri Lankan Tamil is different than Indian Tamil, and like also other languages that I have to because I lived from Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi, Calcutta, like Indo-Tibet borders, like Indo-Bangladesh border, and like all different types of places I've been, just surviving.
Yeah, yeah. That is very impressive, man. I mean, I hear many people talk about having a tough childhood, but I mean, after hearing your story, I think that all sounds like a joke, man. I mean, some people, they had, their parent, their father maybe left the family and all that. Yeah, but your childhood was, it's very understandable that you became depressed and you had a very tough time to keep up with this kind of suffering at this early age. And even more remarkable is how you came out of it as a successful entrepreneur and co-founder of multiple businesses, who is now living in Berlin and living such a purposeful life, helping other entrepreneurs and maybe kids even to make a living in like the global south, as you call it. Yeah, so that is very impressive.
Thank you.
That is very impressive. And I mean, there's no way to tell what all the businesses you are operating right now are doing because there's just too many of them. But I think we got the gist. Like there's operationals, the corporate side, and then the social enterprise side. And I think we will just make sure that there's enough links under the video for people to look them up and to check them out, and maybe also for those who need your help to get in touch with you, because there must be a lot of youngsters on this planet who could use someone like you as a coach and as a mentor, and who would help them to start.
Yes.
What would be your words of advice to young Ara, or to someone who is in a situation where they're really, looking to make something happen and struggling to make the first steps as an entrepreneur?
I mean, I don't know if I can still give like an advice doing all this thing, because for me everything just happened because people think that, oh, Aravinth, you did this and you did that and it's so exciting, this and that. And I mean, I still hold my Sri Lankan passport, which is one of the lowest valued passport and difficult in every airport. But I still been to more than 60 countries on that passport. So I always tell my change makers, we call them change maker, we don't call them students or something like that in our social enterprise side, that I always told, and they asked me like, brother, why you still have this passport? I can change it to German, or I can change German because I've been here for more than 12 years. And so I always told them I want to be an example that that to you people, that don't be a third-class citizen in a first-class country. Be a first-class citizen in a third-class country. So if you can solve the problem where you are, that's what your region, and your problem, you will have all the opportunities. You don't have to be run away from one place to to do these things. And so that's why, like, that's what I tell them as an advice. You take ownership of your situation. It could be anywhere, any situation, any difficult situation within your mental situation, physical situation, family, socio-economic, environmental, and so on. And so that's why. So one second, I have an interview, so we can sit. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what I tell people, and as something that to to even especially from the underserved parts of the world, that we empower youngsters. And they always think that, oh, you come to Germany and you can be happy in your life. It's not true. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I spend more time in Asia than, like, I
yeah.
love to spend more, but I usually, like, I'm more moving back and
Yeah.
forth. And yeah, so that's what it's all about.
Wow. And this is also connected to the migration crisis, I guess. And what you are suggesting is actually the solution to this whole migration crisis, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. Like, you come to Germany, everything is peachy, and I think that's not really the case. But I think to take to take control and take ownership of what's happening in your country and to solve that, I think that is much more purposeful than, as you said, to be a third class citizen in a first class country. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people
But,
might ask, "Oh, Aravind, you're saying this sitting in Germany," but, like, most of my operational work is in global South, and I ended up here without any, like, it was not a choice. It just whatever I did was just because I wanted to do it. It's because I was not allowed to do, and that's why I did. Yeah. So
yeah, yeah, fascinating. All right, man. So you are a very busy guy, and I don't want to waste too much of your time or take too much of your time. But this was a very inspiring interview. I learned so much about Mr. Ara and what he's doing in his business, and especially in his social enterprise. I'll be happy to spread the word to all those who would need your help and to whom this will be relevant. I'd like to thank you for this podcast interview, and I will put, as I said, all the information in the description, and I hope we can stay in touch.
yeah, thank you so much for the podcast. And as you said, I will share the links and you can look at it. It could be interesting, for people in your region. I mean, problems are different from region to region, and so you
Yeah.
always have to customize whatever the solution that you're importing, even if our model may not work directly for your region. So you always have to do. And again, as you said, like, one of our organization, we are operating in 40 countries, as in supporting 180 plus
Wow.
grassroots organization in 40 countries in global South. So we kind of always can connect to other organizations in your region, and to co-create things together. You don't have to build things yourself alone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ara.
Thank you.